I am now joined by Carlos Cordero. Carlos, thank you so much for joining me today, and congratulations on winning this year's Stephen Paulus Emerging Composers Competition. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's my honor and it's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Oh, it's really great to have you. And Carlos, please introduce yourself to our audiences. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your work, where you're living, and what you're working on right now.
Okay, so my name is Carlos Cordero. I always say hola people. It's kind of the easier way to always let people know that I speak both English and Spanish. And it's just something, that I've learned through the years to like, how do I want to really present myself? Because I think in the beginning I was very, very worried about how being super formal and being super strict about what would I say. But in reality, I learned that the most it doesn't mean that I present myself informally, but that I present myself in the way that I am. So that's part of how I like to talk to people, and I just love how it gets me closer to people. So first of all, people, my name is Carlos, and I am from Venezuela. I live currently, I always say Austin, Texas, though right now I'm a little bit outside of Austin in Pflugerville, but it's just a little bit more difficult to say. Yeah, so I live in Texas. I moved to the US a few years ago now, 6 years, no, a little bit more. Anyway, 6 years I came to Houston where I did my master in composition with Dr. David Ashley White and had the tremendous honor to not only study with him, but also to be with Dr. Betsy Weber in concert choral. And it was just a beautiful experience to, I always say, is the choral dream to have these two teachers just learning not only the music part, but also the community parts of what it means to write and be in the choral community. I've always tried to find why I write music, and later here in my life, I always started to say like, oh yeah, I'm new to this composition. And so because composition was kind of a left turn in my career, but now I've been composing for 10 years. So it makes sense that I've delved into these questions of how to better connect to this reason why I write music, right? So writing music for me, I like to create pieces that allows us to have conversations on how to be kinder to each other. And it's interesting to, since I made that change, it's when I started to find organizations like yours that really care not only about the music, but about what that message brings to our audiences and what conversations can we have about the music, because it's not only about I'm going to listen to music and that ends there, but how does that affect what we go on and do with our day? So it's been beautiful to explore how does that help me pick a text, how does that text is set, and how then I relate to the organization and their audience. Interestingly enough, for this competition, it was beautiful to then perceive the text, because then you start studying or understanding how does it aligns with your mission. And that's also a beautiful side, because you don't spend as much time kind of, I would say, judging is part of like reading several texts and deciding, okay, what do I want to do? But you have more time to dwell, to dive into the text per se and understand what your journey and your mission is. So that was a beautiful experience with it. Right now, I am not in Texas. I am in New Haven, and I'm having a concert here with the Yale Glee Club. And it's also it is a very special opportunity, because I got to also write this piece with my good friend Julie Flanders. She's an amazing poet, and in this piece we're talking about breaking silence and how can we break that silence without harming each other, which is something so timely for our country and our world. So that's what I'm up to right now, but glad to be here to talk about footprints.
Well, thank you, and thank you for that beautiful explanation of your career journey. I'm thrilled you took that left turn as you described it, and went into composition because I think you're making a big impact on the world in in your composing. Um, and I absolutely love and couldn't agree more with the importance of building connections and we through music, which is truly what we're about. In fact, our name, True Concord, the etymology of that word concord is hearts together. And so when we perform music, when we're doing it as performers, but when we're performing it for and with audiences, that sense of togetherness and connection is so important. And I just love that you emphasize that in your work. Tell us about the Happy Choir, and is the Happy Choir, was that your idea, and what is the Happy Choir?
Yeah, so that's part two of my brand. The Happy Choir, it kind of, I call it a philosophy. A lot of people ask me like, oh, do you have a choir and can I sing in the Happy Choir? I don't currently have a physical Happy Choir. I have another choir that's called Unheard. But the Happy Choir per se, it's my philosophy of how do I then want to recognize my brand, which was, to be honest with you, a big task to I was thinking in the beginning like, oh my God, do I always have to be happy? Do I always have to write happy music? And no, I discovered that the happiness per se didn't come from the joy. Of course, music gives us joy. Being with people gives us this great satisfaction of community and collaboration. But it was more about the happiness that comes from being able to share moments, to speak, to communicate, and to share ideas or try to solve a problem, to try to help somebody. So the Happy Choir became more of the movement that allows us to uh, exercise choral music in the best possible ways, not just notes on a page. I always say with the choirs that I work with is like I did some of the work here, sitting down, writing all the recipe, in this paper, but we are still cooking this piece. We're still creating this piece. So you are bringing um, as much of your heart, as much of your stories and journey as I do. So please, create with me this piece. And the Happy Choir became that way of it was simple enough for me to be able to explain it and connect with it. So that's why it became my brand.
That's a great brand, and again, it goes back to those connections. And making music is such a personal endeavor, is particularly choral singing, right? I
It's very
mean,
vulnerable.
yeah, it is. I mean, because our body is our instrument, right? It's such a personal endeavor, and to have everyone's hearts and minds in the same place in that music making, that singing process is so powerful. And yeah, it's a happy place.
And in within the Happy Choir, I have kind of this philosophy too of what it's voice and what it's audience, because I'm a singer too. That's why I'm saying that it was a left turn, because I always say that I'm always a singer first and then a conductor and composer. But my voice is not only my singing voice, but also kind of everything that I do. And I'm not bringing that to say that it's that to create anxiety, right? Because I always talk to people and say it's everything that you do, but it doesn't mean that it's more opportunities for you to express yourself, the way that you choose a text, the way that you say hello to somebody, those opportunities are places for you to say, hey, I'm Carlos, and this is how I am, right? And then audience is not only the audience that comes to the concert, but also the people that are in presence of our voice. So for example, in a choir, the choir and the conductor are the people who live the most with the piece.
Yeah.
So we become the audience of that piece too. We become the audience of that text. So I think that learning that we have even more opportunities than concert night to connect and to expand that conversation is just an opportunity to create more special moments.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. Um, so this competition is such that you sent in your samples of your music. You were selected as the winner among dozens of applicants we had from around the country. So again, congratulations. The competition was adjudicated by our co-composers in residence, Jocelyn Hagan and Tim Takash. Yours stood out, and as a result, then we asked you to write a piece for us. And in this year in which we're celebrating Tucson's 250th birth year, the founding of our city here, we wanted a piece that celebrated Tucson. And so we presented to you a poem by Enrique Garcia, otherwise known as Q. This piece that describes Tucson, and you have called it Footprints. And I just love to get your impressions of the poem and what inspired you about it, and then how you went about setting this this poem about Tucson.
You know, something that I really, really enjoyed. First of all, I enjoy a lot of nature, and I don't get to write a lot about it just because I usually write short texts that are about how we speak in our everyday life. And I usually set texts that are maybe about social moments, right? So nature comes in within that. But in this piece, I love that it was mainly about nature. And it was still throughout this very simple yet very powerful way of talking about the places, about the moments. When I was in Houston, I found myself, so something when I moved here, I was struggling to connect with people for a while, right? While I had that transition, that cultural shock, that missing my family, but learning the new place, right? And I found myself just having great moments of stillness with the trees in University of Houston. I just every time that I had lunch or a time to be outside, and it was not summer. In summer it was a little bit more difficult. But in those other moments, I just found myself like really taking time to find trees and look at the shape, the leaves, the moments, the sound, and that gave me a lot of peace. So this point was just such a beautiful way of remembering, of reconnecting with that moment of I can pause and really appreciate the sunset or the brooks or
Yeah.
even the footprints because that's another way that I think about nature. It's not only about what we see, but how we interact with it. And something that Enrique did beautifully is talking about how we are part of that and how we live through it. And I think even deeper on the thought of, for example, bringing something as simple as a cacti and embedding and recognizing its holiness. Many people will think like, oh, it's just part of nature, but there is something holy about it, and there is something powerful about it. Even in the moment where he says at the end, believing in the sleeping magic of the desert,
Yeah.
that idea of that there is even more to be felt. There is even more that it's still there waiting to awake. Those things were really inspiring and really beautiful to just kind of, even for myself, I have not spent a lot of time in Tucson, unfortunately. And I'm so sorry that I won't be able to
Yeah.
make it there. But with this text, I felt I was there and I felt in many ways that I could sit down through Enrique's eyes. And in that way, understanding that even during moments of challenges where, for example, maybe human connections might be difficult at some points, we can always know that we have ourselves and the way that we consume our environment. So understanding that there is also there the sun, the clouds, the different ways that are that life presents us with other things to connect with. It might mean that we might not have at hand right now somebody else to connect to, but we have something there, and might mean that that's the time to connect with it. So I felt really lucky to get to work with this text. I felt also lately I've been trying to recognize too as you say, how unique the human voice as an instrument is.
Yeah.
And, you know, in many ways, when we learn to write music, we kind of through time, we learn like, oh, this is how much you write for this. These are your ranges. This is how much you want to keep within, right? But with these later pieces, I've been trying to expand a little bit that more in terms of just trying to, again, as I say, you know, like what I write is not always set in stone. We can always talk about it, and I want to, you know, in many ways, a lot of times they will say like, don't write so low for the bass, don't write so high for the soprano or alto. And when you start meeting more people, you start knowing too that the human voice it can be as unique as everybody is different, right? So you might have an alto who might sing lower than a tenor, you know, and that it's completely fine because it's a voice. It's not an alto or a tenor, it's a voice. So in this piece, the audience might feel like, oh, we're giving away right away a climax or so because of high notes. But I would invite people to question themselves about where is the climax and where do I feel the climax of the piece is? Because as art being subjective, climax kind of society have taught us like climax is the loudest or the fastest or the extremes, right?
Yeah.
But climax can be whatever you
Yeah.
want it to be. So I
Yeah.
will invite the audience to decide where is the piece really speaking to you. Because for me, for example, not music-wise, but text-wise, when Enrique mentions the holy cacti,
Yeah.
uh, the little houses, like casitas in Tucson's, and
Yeah.
then just the repetition of the word I believe and finding kind of tiny things. I loved that, you know, like the surface beneath you, even though surface can refer to a big space, I think of like just what it's right now here with
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So trying to find those places, I think it's a beautiful way of slowing down this life that is going so fast sometimes.
It's so true. You've given us just a beautiful setting of this really wonderful poem about Tucson, and I couldn't agree with you more in terms of the beauty of nature. And we are blessed here in Tucson to have an abundance of beauty of nature. It's one of the hallmarks of this place. It's one of the reasons I love being here and living here. And these words and your music really amplify that beauty, I think, and in a way that it's just a tribute and a testament to this city that's been here for 250 years now.
50.
Yeah, it's really special. I'm sorry you can't be here for the premiere, but I do hope that we can have you here in Tucson at some point in the future, and that this is just the beginning of a relationship with you, Carlos. You're a great composer. Your star is definitely on the rise. We're fortunate to be able to feature your music on this upcoming program, and look forward to doing more work with you. And so
Thank you
all
so
my best
much.
to you, and all best on your work out there at Yale and your upcoming events and projects. And thanks again for joining me on this conversation.
Thank you so much.
Take care.